Rain tapped lightly on the rusted roof of Dave's garage, the kind of soft, steady drizzle that made everything feel a little heavier. The air smelled of oil, old rubber, and worn-out hope. Dave Carter, a small-town mechanic with grease under his nails and more debt than dollars in his pocket, wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days. He was 39, divorced, and clinging to a dream that had long since lost its shine. His garage was half empty, just one old Chevy waiting on parts he couldn't afford. Business had been slow for months. Bills were stacking up. And every time the phone rang, it was someone asking for money, never offering it. Dave had once been someone. Top of his class at tech school, known for his quick hands and honest work. But life had a way of twisting even the best roads. A bad business partner, a bitter custody battle, and the slow crumble of a small-town economy had left him barely hanging on. Still, every morning he opened the garage, hoping for a miracle, or at least a customer. That afternoon, with the clouds darkening and no work in sight, Dave decided to close early. He packed up, grabbed his old thermos, and headed for the highway in his beat-up Ford pickup. Sometimes, when the weight of the world got too heavy, he'd drive out to the overlook just outside town and watch the sun set behind the hills. It wasn't much, but it gave him something to hold on to. As he pulled onto the main road, he spotted a figure up ahead, standing on the shoulder with a small duffel bag and her thumb out. Hitchhiker. She looked out of place on that road. Young, maybe early 20s, wearing a weathered denim jacket and black boots caked in mud. Her hair was tied back, face half hidden by oversized sunglasses. She didn't look dangerous. She looked tired. Lost maybe. Dave slowed down without thinking. He'd been raised to help people, even if the world hadn't always returned the favor. As he rolled down his window, the woman stepped closer. "Need a ride?" he asked, voice cautious but kind. She hesitated just a second too long. "Yeah. If it's not too much trouble." "Where you headed?" "Just out of town," she said. "As far as you're going is fine." There was something in her voice, steady but guarded, like she was choosing every word carefully. Dave nodded and unlocked the passenger door. "Hop in." She slid into the seat, clutching her bag like it held her whole life. He didn't press. Everyone's running from something, he figured. And if she didn't want to talk, that was fine with him. They drove in silence for a while, the tires humming against the wet road. Dave stole a glance at her when he thought she wasn't looking. She had that clean but worn look, like someone who came from money but had been living rough for a few days. Her boots were scuffed, and her jacket was fraying at the cuffs, but her nails were still neat. She smelled faintly of expensive perfume trying to cover something else. Sweat, nerves, fear maybe. "You got a name?" he finally asked. She looked at him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Call me Rachel." He nodded. "Dave." The truck rumbled on. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled over the hills. Rachel shifted in her seat, glanced behind them as if she was expecting someone to follow. "You okay?" Dave asked. She forced another smile. "Yeah. Just long day." Dave didn't push it. He knew that look. He'd seen it in the mirror more times than he cared to admit. A look that said, "I don't want to talk about it. Please don't ask." But he couldn't help wondering. Who was she? What was she running from? Rachel stared out the window, watching trees blur past. In her bag was a wallet with no ID, a dead phone, and 10 crisp $100 bills she hadn't had time to exchange. Just 72 hours ago, she'd been standing on a marble floor, arguing with lawyers about freedom and inheritance. Now she was on the run, hiding from cameras, reporters, and the weight of a last name that had become a prison. She'd grown up behind gates, under constant watch. The daughter of a billionaire whose death made headlines around the world. Rachel Langford, heiress, socialite, now vanished. Of course, Dave didn't know any of that. To him, she was just a quiet girl with sad eyes and a heavy bag. And maybe that's why she felt safe in his truck. For the first time in days, no one was asking who she was or what she was worth. She wasn't a name or a headline. She was just Rachel. But safety was a fragile thing. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold and gray, Dave turned off the main road and onto a winding trail toward the overlook. "You hungry?" he asked. "There's a little diner up ahead. Not much, but they do a decent burger." Rachel hesitated. "That sounds nice." He smiled. "You're not allergic to old jukebox music and strong coffee, are you?" She laughed softly. "No. Sounds kind of perfect, actually." They pulled into the gravel lot of the diner just as the first real drops of rain began to fall. Inside, the lights were warm. The air smelled of bacon and old stories, and no one gave Rachel a second glance. Dave held the door for her, and for a moment, it felt like they were just two strangers sharing a meal, not a runaway and a man with nothing left to lose. But outside, parked at a gas station 2 towns back, a black SUV had just pulled in. A man in a sharp suit stepped out, holding a photo. He showed it to the clerk, who nodded toward the road. "Yeah," the clerk said. "She was here. Maybe an hour ago. Got in a truck with a guy. Old Ford. Local plates." The man didn't thank him. He just got back in the SUV and drove off, windshield wipers slicing through the rain. Back at the diner, Rachel sipped her coffee, unaware that the past she'd tried to outrun was catching up fast. And Dave. He had no idea that the stranger he picked up wasn't just down on her luck. She was the key to a secret worth millions. And someone out there wasn't going to let her go without a fight. "Would you like me to continue the next part of the story?" The waitress at the diner was named Shelley, a woman in her 50s with a kind smile and a voice that had probably called out 1,000 coffee orders over the years. She didn't blink twice when Dave and Rachel walked in. She just handed them menus with sticky covers and poured 2 mugs of fresh coffee, steam curling up like lazy smoke signals. Dave took the booth near the back, the one by the window where you could still see the rain dripping down in silver lines. Rachel slid in across from him, tucking her bag beside her feet. Her eyes kept darting toward the door every few minutes, like she was expecting someone to walk in and yank her out by the collar. Dave noticed but didn't mention it. He figured she'd talk when she was ready, if ever. "You from around here?" he asked, trying to keep things light. She shook her head. "No. Just passing through." "Where from?" "Oz. East Coast. Long way to hitchhike," he said. Another pause, then a small shrug. "I needed to leave." Dave nodded slowly. "I get that." He really did. Everyone in that diner had a story, a reason for being where they were instead of where they thought they'd end up. That's just how life went sometimes. You made plans and then something or someone came along and tore them apart. Rachel stared at her coffee like it held answers. Dave watched her carefully. There was something in the way she carried herself. She was alert, careful with her words, her eyes scanning faces before they landed on them. It wasn't just that she was nervous. It was deeper than that. She was hiding something. "Look," he said after a moment, "I'm not trying to pry. If you're in some kind of trouble, maybe I can help." She looked up sharply. "Why would you want to help me?" He shrugged, honest. "Because you looked like you needed it." Rachel's eyes softened for a moment. "Thanks. But I'll be fine." The waitress returned with 2 plates, Dave's burger and fries and Rachel's grilled cheese. She picked at it slowly, clearly more used to 5-star meals than diner food, but she didn't complain. In fact, she didn't say much at all for a while. Outside, the rain picked up. The parking lot was empty except for Dave's truck and a couple of dusty sedans. The lights inside the diner flickered once, then held steady. Rachel finally broke the silence. "If you knew who I was, you probably wouldn't have stopped." Dave raised an eyebrow. "You wanted for something." She shook her head. "Not like that." "Well, unless you stole a school bus or burned down a church, I don't scare easy." That made her smile a little. But it faded fast. "You ever feel like your whole life is decided for you before you even get a say?" "All the time." She leaned back against the booth. "My name's not Rachel." Dave didn't move. Just waited. "It's Emily," she said. "Emily Langford." He blinked. The name rang a bell. He'd heard it on the news a few days ago. Something about a missing heiress, family money, big estate drama. Click now. The face half hidden by sunglasses. The designer perfume. The edge in her voice. "You're that Langford." She nodded. "I didn't kill anyone, if that's what you're wondering." "I wasn't," he said. "But now I'm curious." Emily looked down. "I left. Had to. After my dad died, everything changed. Lawyers came out of nowhere. My stepmother tried to lock everything down. They were going to send me away. Lock me in some house with a handler. Claim I wasn't mentally fit to manage my own life. I haven't even turned 25 yet." Dave whistled low. "And the press. They think I'm having a breakdown. Or ran off with some guy. I didn't. I just needed air. I needed to breathe somewhere no one knew me." "You picked a good place," he said. "Ain't much to look at, but the people mostly leave you be." Emily looked out the window, then back at him. "Why are you being so nice?" Dave smiled faintly. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything and not know who to trust." She didn't say anything, but something in her eyes shifted. Not exactly trust, but maybe the beginning of it. Just as Dave was about to ask what her plan was next, a sudden flash of headlights swept across the window. A sleek black SUV pulled into the parking lot, engine still running even as the door opened. Emily froze. Her face drained of color. "Is that them?" Dave asked quietly. "I don't know. But I can't stay to find out." Dave glanced at the waitress. "We're gonna head out. Keep the change." Shelley waved without looking up, already focused on wiping down a table. They slid out of the booth. Dave didn't ask questions, just moved fast and calm. Emily gripped her bag tight, ducked low as they stepped outside. Rain hit them like a cold sheet, but Dave didn't stop. He walked to the truck like nothing was wrong, like it was just a normal evening. Inside the SUV, a figure watched them through the windshield. Then the engine revved, headlights flickering back on. Dave didn't wait. He opened the passenger door for Emily, slammed it shut behind her, then climbed in and started the truck. The engine coughed, hesitated, then turned over. The SUV backed out slowly, then followed as Dave pulled onto the road. "They're tailing us," Emily said. "I see that." Dave's hands gripped the wheel tight, knuckles white. "You sure you don't know who they are? Could be my stepmother's lawyer. Or a private investigator. Or worse." "Worse." She hesitated. "Let's just say my father had enemies. People who didn't want me alive long enough to claim my inheritance." Dave blinked. "That's not something you mention casually." "I didn't think I'd have to," she muttered. The road ahead curved into thick woods, the kind of stretch that had no cell service and no streetlights. Dave took a sharp right onto a back road only locals knew, the SUV's lights vanishing behind trees for a moment. He cut the headlights. "What are you doing?" Emily whispered. "Buying us a minute." They drove in darkness, the rain pattering on the windshield, only the faint glow from the dashboard lighting their faces. Behind them no lights yet, just trees and night. Emily clutched her bag, heart pounding. "Dave." "Yeah. If something happens to me, there's a flash drive in this bag. Has everything. Names, emails, records. My dad's will. The truth." He looked at her. "Let's make sure nothing happens to you." But even as he said it, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, and that whatever road they were on, there was no going back now. "Want me to continue the story from here in the next part?" The rain didn't let up. It came down harder now, pounding on the roof of Dave's truck like fists trying to break through. His wipers squeaked against the glass, barely keeping up. He drove with his jaw tight, eyes flicking between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. No sign of headlights yet, but that didn't mean they weren't out there. Whoever was in that SUV wasn't just cruising. They were looking for something or someone, and Dave had a bad feeling it wasn't going to end with a friendly conversation. Emily sat beside him, arms wrapped around her bag like it was the only thing tethering her to safety. Her breathing had slowed, but he could still see the tension in her shoulders. She wasn't built for running. Not like this. Dave wondered how long she'd been on the move before he picked her up. Days. Weeks. Whatever her story was, it was bigger than he'd guessed. "Where does that road go?" she asked softly, pointing to a narrow dirt path cutting off the main trail. "Old Ranger Road," he said. "Leads up to a fire lookout. No one goes up there this time of year. Can we take it?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, but we'll have to lay low. If we're up there and someone follows, we've got nowhere to run." Emily didn't answer, just looked out the window as he turned off the road. The truck bounced over rocks and roots, mud splashing against the undercarriage. The trees grew thick on either side, swallowing the little light that remained. Dave turned off the headlights again, moving slow, careful not to get stuck. By the time they reached the old fire tower, the rain had softened to a mist. The structure stood tall and crooked, its stairs rusted but intact. Dave parked under the trees and killed the engine. "We'll wait it out here," he said. Emily nodded and pulled her jacket tighter. "You ever hide someone before?" "Not exactly," he said. "But I've had my share of folks needing a place to breathe." Inside the tower, the air was musty and cold, but it was dry. Emily dropped her bag and paced. Dave found an old lantern and lit it, casting a dim glow across the room. Through the windows, they could see miles of trees and fog creeping between the hills. For a moment it was quiet. Then Emily spoke. "My dad didn't just leave me money. He left me a message." Dave turned. "What kind of message?" He knew something was coming. He didn't trust the people around him, said they were watching him. He kept records, audio logs, documents, photos. That flash drive. It's not just about money. It's about people who made a lot of dirty deals under the Langford name. Dave sat on an old bench. "And you're saying someone would rather see you disappear than let that get out?" Emily nodded. "They tried to erase me legally. Say I was unstable. Then someone started following me. I couldn't trust anyone. I didn't even go to the police. My family has people in every corner." Dave ran a hand over his face. "You picked the wrong mechanic for this mess." "Maybe," she said. "But you stopped. You helped me. And now you're in it too." Meanwhile, back in town, the SUV had returned. The man in the suit, sharp-eyed and quiet, stepped into Dave's garage. The lights were off, the place locked up. He studied the sign, then looked through the windows. "Me." He pulled out his phone. "She's with someone," he said. "Guy's a mechanic. Local. Truck's registered to a Dave Carter. Divorced. No priors, but he's broke. Garage's about to be shut down. Probably thinks he's just doing a good deed." The voice on the other end was cold. "We need her found by morning." The man nodded. "We'll check the Overlook next. He takes his truck there a lot, according to the locals." Back in the fire tower, Emily rested her head against the windowpane. "Do you ever wish you could just disappear and start over?" Dave leaned back. "Every day." She turned to him. "Then why didn't you?" He gave a half smile. "Because starting over costs more than I've got. And because my kid's still here. Lives with her mom in the next county. I screw up, I lose even the weekends I get with her." Emily looked at him differently now. "What's her name?" "Lily," he said. "She's 9. Loves cars. Hates math. Thinks I'm a superhero because I can change oil with my eyes closed." Emily smiled for the first time in a while. "She sounds lucky." "I'm the lucky one," Dave said quietly. They both sat in silence for a long minute, listening to the rain tap the glass. Then a sound, a distant crunch of gravel. "Tires." Dave was on his feet in a second. "Stay here." He moved to the edge of the stairs, peering down through the trees. Shape moved below, low, quiet. Not headlights, not a car. Then another sound. A step. Dave slipped back inside. "Someone's here." Emily's face went pale. "What do? "We wait. Don't move. Don't speak." They pressed against the wall, hearts pounding. Below them, branches snapped softly. Someone was circling the tower, just out of sight. Minutes passed like hours. Then, just as suddenly, the noise stopped. Dave crept to the window, held his breath, and looked again. Nothing. But something was wrong. He could feel it. That stillness wasn't peace. It was tension. Waiting. Emily clutched her bag tighter. Down in the woods, the man in the suit spoke softly into a radio. "They're here. Tower's dark, but fresh tire tracks. We'll wait. No need to rush." From another trail, two more dark figures emerged, moving through the trees like shadows. The hunt had begun. And up in the tower, Dave and Emily still didn't know how close the danger had gotten, or how far the truth would have to stretch before either of them got out alive. Want me to continue with the next part of the story? The wind picked up around the fire tower, howling through the trees like something was calling from deep in the forest. Dave stood motionless by the window, trying to make sense of the shifting shadows below. The old wood creaked beneath their feet, and he motioned for Emily to sit still and stay quiet. Her breathing had slowed, but he could feel the fear rolling off her in waves. She was clutching the flash drive like it was her last hope, the last piece of her father she still had. Dave reached slowly into his duffel and pulled out an old revolver. It was rusty, barely reliable, but it was something. He hadn't fired it in years, maybe longer, but tonight it felt heavier than he remembered. Emily's eyes widened when she saw it. "I don't want to use it," he whispered. "Do you think you'll have to?" He didn't answer. Below them, the woods had gone too quiet. No birds. No rustling. Even the rain had stopped. Dave had lived in this part of the country long enough to know that silence like that wasn't natural. It meant someone or something was moving carefully. Emily rose to her knees and crawled toward the other side of the lookout where another window faced the path below. She peeked out, heart hammering. "There's someone down there," she said under her breath. "Two of them." Dave joined her. Through the glass, he spotted two figures moving low through the trees, slow and methodical, like they were used to not being seen. One of them pointed up toward the tower. They weren't guessing, they knew. Dave pulled Emily back. "They've got backup. We can't stay here. There's nowhere else to go." He looked around the small cabin-like structure. It was meant to be a temporary shelter, not a fortress. One door. 4 windows. A trap if they waited long enough. "I used to keep emergency ropes in the storage locker," he muttered. "There might still be one coiled up under the floor." Emily's voice shook. "You want to climb down the tower in the dark, into the woods where they're waiting?" He gave her a look. "Better than waiting for them to come up." She didn't argue. Dave pried open the floor hatch and rummaged around until his fingers landed on something thick and rough. Frayed in places but still usable. He tied it off at the base of one of the support beams and tossed the coil out the back window, away from where the men had been spotted. Emily hesitated. "What if they're on that side too?" "Then we go down fighting," Dave said simply. "You first." She didn't protest this time. She shoved the flash drive into her jacket pocket, pulled the hood over her head, and gripped the rope tight. Her hands trembled, but she started to lower herself down, inch by inch, boots scraping against the wooden supports. Dave followed close behind, gun tucked into his waistband, breath shallow. The rope groaned with their weight, but it held. Halfway down, they heard voices above them. A door creaked open. Heavy boots stepped onto the lookout floor. "They're gone," someone said. "Check the rope," another voice ordered. Dave froze. He looked up and saw a flashlight beam sweep out of the window, landing inches from Emily's leg. She held still, every muscle locked. Then the beam moved on. "They went down this way," the first voice said. "Split up. Cut them off before they hit the highway." The moment the footsteps moved away, Dave and Emily dropped the last few feet to the ground, landing hard on the wet forest floor. They didn't wait, they ran. The trees swallowed them in seconds. Branches whipped at their arms and faces. Roots twisted underfoot. Dave led the way, heart pounding, lungs burning. He knew the trails, knew where the old hunting cabins and dried-up creeks were. If they could make it to the riverbed, they might have a chance of losing whoever was behind them. Emily stumbled, nearly fell, but kept moving. Where are we going? There's a ranger shack down the hill. Old boarded up. If we make it there, we can hide. They didn't speak again. Every sound felt too loud. Snapping twigs, panting breaths, even the way the wind pushed through the branches. Somewhere behind them, more voices shouted. Lights danced between the trees. They were getting closer. At the bottom of a steep drop, Dave spotted the shack. It was half covered in vines, the roof sagging from years of weather, but it was shelter. He yanked the door open and pulled Emily inside. It smelled of mildew and old leaves, but they slammed the door shut and ducked low. Outside, footsteps approached. Slow, careful. Dave held his breath. A silhouette passed by the front window. Emily's fingers dug into his arm. The figure paused, turned back. The beam of a flashlight swept across the trees, then landed on the shack. The man walked forward. Dave raised the revolver, hands shaking. The doorknob jiggled. Then silence. The man stepped back, scanned the area once more, and moved on. They waited, still as stone, long after the footsteps faded. When Dave finally exhaled, it felt like he'd been holding it for hours. Emily sagged against the wall, her face pale. "They're not just chasing me," she whispered. "They're hunting me." Dave nodded. "And now they know you've got something worth killing for." She looked at him. "What are we going to do?" He didn't answer right away. He looked down at the flash drive she had clutched so tightly. "You said there were names on that thing. Powerful people." "Yes. If we get it to the right person, someone outside your family's reach, it could blow everything open. But who can I trust?" "I might know someone," Dave said. "Old friend from high school. He's in Denver now. Works with independent media. They dig into stuff like this, corporate corruption, political blackmail. But getting there won't be easy." "Then we better move fast," Emily said. "Because they're not going to stop." Dave listened again to the forest outside. The storm had passed, but the real danger hadn't. They were deep in something now, deeper than either of them had ever been. And with every step they took, the people chasing them got closer. The night wasn't over yet. And somewhere out there, someone was waiting for them to slip, to panic, to make a mistake. But they weren't running anymore. They were surviving. And the truth Emily carried wasn't just a secret. It was a weapon. Want me to continue with the climax and resolution next? The night pressed in tight around the shack, the cold settling into their bones. Dave kept watch near the boarded-up window, while Emily sat curled on the dusty floor, hugging her knees. Neither had slept. Outside, the woods had gone quiet again, the kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something was holding its breath. Suddenly, Dave's phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a number he didn't recognize. He hesitated, then answered. "You don't know me," the voice said, low and urgent. "But if you've got Emily Langford with you, you need to move now. They're tracking both of you, and you've got less than 30 minutes before they lock down every exit from these woods." Dave's body tensed. "Who is this?" "I used to work for her father. Security detail. Not all of us were loyal to the people that took over. I've been watching her since the estate fallout. She's not safe with anyone tied to Langford Industries. Not the lawyers, not the police, not even the estate executor. They've turned the whole inheritance into a cover operation." Dave looked at Emily, who was now staring at him, alarmed. He put the phone on speaker. "Why should we believe you?" Emily asked. "Because they're not after the money," the man replied. "They're after something your father buried inside that flash drive. Something even you don't know you have. And if they get to you before you figure it out, it won't just be your life on the line. It'll be anyone who's helped you." Dave felt the chill settle deeper. "What is it?" "The drive is more than financial records. It contains a code, a digital key that unlocks a second vault. One hidden off-grid. Inside that vault is footage. Proof your father recorded of secret meetings between global energy leaders, politicians, And yes, Langford execs. Your father knew he was part of something dark, and when he tried to back out, they turned on him. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. But I never saw anything like that on it. That's because it's encrypted beneath a decoy layer. You need the key he left behind. And that's the twist they didn't expect. Your father didn't hide it in a bank. He left it somewhere personal. Somewhere emotional. Think, where would he trust it the most? Emily's mind raced. Childhood memories blurred together. Late nights in her father's study. Walks around their vineyard estate. His quiet voice always saying, "If you ever need me, look where the light always comes in." Her eyes widened. The greenhouse. He built a hidden garden under the greenhouse. It was his favorite place. He said it was where he could finally breathe. The voice on the phone cut in again. They'll be watching it. But it's the only way. Then the line went dead. Dave stared at the phone, pulse racing. This keeps getting deeper. Emily nodded. If we don't get to that vault, they'll control the story. My father will be remembered as a criminal, and the people really pulling the strings will erase everything. Dave rubbed his jaw. Denver can wait. We go to the greenhouse. They left the shack just before dawn, sticking to the tree line, avoiding the dirt roads. Dave knew the back trails better than most. What should have been a 3-hour drive became an 8-hour journey through forgotten mountain roads and old fuel stops, where Dave used cash and kept his head down. They didn't talk much. The weight of what they were carrying had finally sunk in. Just before sunset, they pulled up near the old Langford estate. The mansion loomed in the distance, lights glowing in the upper windows. The place was supposed to be empty, but clearly someone was home. Emily pointed toward the back. The greenhouse is past that ridge. There's a service road. My dad used to sneak me in that way when I was little. They moved on foot, circling the property through the overgrown fields. The greenhouse came into view, its glass panes catching the last golden rays of sun. From this distance it looked untouched, peaceful. But as they got closer, Dave saw the signs. Fresh boot prints in the soil. A broken sensor wire. A half-buried listening device near the stone path. They were here, he whispered. Or still are. Emily's breath caught in her throat. They slipped inside through the side panel, stepping over ivy and flower pots. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and fading roses. Sunlight filtered through the glass above, and for a moment Emily paused. This place. It feels like he's still here. Dave scanned the floor. Where would he hide it? Emily knelt by the central planter. The soil was softer, freshly turned. She dug with her hands, dirt packing under her nails. Then her fingers hit something hard. Metal box. She pulled it out and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a small brass key, a handwritten note, and a tiny device shaped like a USB but heavier, almost like it had a second function. The note read, "If they're reading this, I failed. But if you are, Emmy, it means you're stronger than I ever was. Use the key. Find the truth. Tell the world." Before Emily could respond, a sharp voice rang out behind them. "Step away from the box." They spun around. The man from the fire tower, sharp suit, calm voice, stood just beyond the greenhouse door, holding a silenced pistol at his side. Behind him, 2 more men blocked the exits. Dave stepped in front of Emily. "You don't have to do this." "Oh, but I do," the man said smoothly. "You two have made quite the mess. And now I have to clean it up." Quietly, Emily held the device behind her back. "You're too late. My father left more than you think." "I'm counting on it," the man replied. "Which is why we're taking you alive. For now." More figures appeared outside, vehicles rolling up silently across the field. Flashlights, earpieces, tactical vests. Dave whispered, "We're surrounded." Emily's voice was steady. "Then we make them work for it." The sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the greenhouse floor. The next moment would decide everything. And they weren't ready to give up just yet. Would you like me to continue into the climax and resolution of the story next? The moment hung in the air, thick with tension. Dave's heart thudded like a hammer in his chest. Emily stood behind him, still gripping the hidden flash drive and the brass key with her dirt-stained fingers. The man with the gun didn't flinch. His voice was calm, his eyes cold, like this was just another job. The two other men at the door slowly began to close in, blocking any escape. Dave took a slow step forward. You don't want to do this. Whatever's on that drive, it's going to come out eventually. You can't stop the truth. The man gave a slight smile. That's where you're wrong. The truth only matters when someone's alive to tell it. Just then, headlights flared from the trees behind the greenhouse. A roar of an engine followed, and a battered SUV came crashing through the side fence, skidding to a stop in a spray of gravel and dust. The passenger door flew open, and out stepped a tall man in a worn leather coat, a press badge clipped to his shirt pocket. Emily Langford, he called. I'm Nolan Graves, independent journalist. Your friend reached out. If what you've got is real, I'll help you tell the world. The gunman snapped toward him, shouting at his men to hold position. Dave took that moment, just 1 second of distraction, and lunged forward, tackling him. The revolver clattered to the floor and went off, the sound muffled but deafening in the greenhouse. Glass shattered above them as chaos erupted. Emily dove to the ground, sliding the flash drive into the hidden device her father had left. A green light blinked. The screen on the side came to life, asking for a passcode. She remembered the note, where the light always comes in. Her father's favorite Bible verse popped into her head, John 1 verse 5. She typed it in. The device chirped, and a second drive port opened. Outside, Nolan was pulling her toward the SUV. Dave scrambled to his feet, blood dripping from a cut on his head but still on his feet. They shoved the unlocked drive into Nolan's laptop, and within seconds, lines of hidden files flooded the screen. Video footage, documents, offshore account trails, internal emails, and most damning of all, clips of private meetings between Langford Industries and high-ranking officials. The gunman staggered out of the greenhouse, bleeding from a graze on his shoulder, eyes wild. You don't understand what you're doing, he shouted. This goes deeper than just one company. You're playing with fire. Emily stood tall. Then let it burn. Suddenly, a helicopter appeared over the tree line, searchlight blazing. For a second, everyone froze, unsure whose side it was on. Then a voice crackled over a loudspeaker. This is federal property. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately. The gunman cursed under his breath. One of his men ran. The other dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Sirens were closing in from every direction. Emily turned to Dave, still clutching her father's key. We did it. We made it. But Dave didn't smile. He was staring at Nolan's laptop, his face pale. Something's not right, he said. There's one more file. It's encrypted separately. Nolan clicked it open. The screen flashed red. Countdown started, 10 seconds. Emily's heart dropped. Wait, is that? A loud beep rang out, followed by a message. For her eyes only. Then a video began to play. It was her father, older, tired, sitting in what looked like a hospital room. Emmy, he began, if you're seeing this, I'm gone. And you're in more danger than I ever imagined. The people I exposed, they were never the top. They were just puppets. The real architect, the one who pulled the strings, was someone you trusted. Someone close. Emily's breath caught. The screen glitched. Another face came into focus. Her uncle, Richard Langford. The man who had raised her after her father's death. The man who had sent people to find her. The man who had always told her she was too emotional to handle the business. Her father's voice continued. He used me. He used all of us. And when I tried to stop him, he made sure I wouldn't live long enough to try again. I couldn't protect you back then. But now you know. Finish what I started. The video ended. Emily stood in stunned silence. Behind them, Federal agents poured into the greenhouse and surrounding property, rounding up the mercenaries, securing the scene. Nolan carefully removed the unlocked flash drive and handed it to an agent, explaining everything. Dave turned to Emily. "You okay?" "No," she whispered. "But I know what I have to do." Later that night, while the agents filed reports and journalists scrambled to verify the evidence, Emily sat quietly beside a fire, staring up at the stars. Dave joined her, handing her a cup of coffee. "You're a long way from the girl hitchhiking by the highway." She looked at him with a tired smile. "And you're a long way from the mechanic down on his luck." He chuckled. "Guess we both had something left to fix." But just as the air seemed to settle and the danger seemed past, Emily's phone buzzed. A blocked number. No name. Just a single text. "This isn't over." She showed it to Dave. He read it, his jaw tightening. He didn't say a word, just tossed another log on the fire. They both knew one thing. The truth was out now, but the people behind the shadows weren't done. Not by a long shot. And Emily Langford wasn't running anymore. Would you like a short epilogue to wrap it all up? The fire crackled softly as Emily stared into the flames, her mind still trying to settle the chaos that had unfolded. The message on her phone, the warning, kept flashing in her thoughts like a broken light. This isn't over. She didn't know who had sent it, but she had a feeling it wasn't just a bluff. Whoever was behind everything, whoever her father had tried to stop, was still watching, still pulling strings from the shadows. But for the first time in weeks, Emily didn't feel like a runaway anymore. She felt grounded, like someone standing her ground instead of fleeing it. The federal agents had taken the files and verified their contents. The media exploded with a story of corporate corruption, hidden deals, and the unexpected truth about the Langford family empire. Nolan's article hit the front page of every major outlet, with Emily's permission. He didn't reveal everything, but he revealed enough. Enough to start an investigation. Enough to keep the world's eyes open. Within days, Richard Langford was arrested on charges of conspiracy, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Footage from the decrypted vault tied him to high-level dealings that had been swept under rugs for decades. The man who once smiled at Emily across the breakfast table now stared coldly from a mugshot that circulated like wildfire. Dave stayed by Emily's side through it all. He'd never asked for this journey. He didn't chase danger or headlines. But he had a heart that knew when something mattered, and someone. He fixed cars for a living, but Emily saw now that he also had a way of fixing people. Quietly, patiently, like he'd done with her. After everything, they went back to his garage for a while. It was dusty, cluttered, and smelled like old oil and coffee, but it felt safe. Emily slept for the first time in days without checking the door twice. Dave rebuilt the truck's front axle, and Emily helped him, even though she'd never held a wrench before. They didn't talk about what came next right away. I just existed, side by side. No plans, no pressure. But soon the questions started to rise again. What would Emily do now? Her name had been cleared, but the Langford legacy was forever changed. The board had dissolved. The estate was in legal limbo. And with the company's collapse, thousands of employees were left wondering what would happen to their futures. "I can't just walk away," Emily said one evening as she closed the garage door behind her. "There are people who relied on us, on the company. I don't want my father's last years to be remembered only for what was exposed." He tried to make it right. Dave looked up from under the truck hood, wiping his hands on a rag. "Then maybe it's your turn now." She nodded slowly. It wasn't about saving the company. It was about transforming it. Rebuilding what was broken from the ground up, this time with truth, transparency, and care. With the help of a few trusted former employees and some good legal counsel, Emily started a new foundation using the funds left untouched by the scandal. She didn't try to reclaim the Langford name. Instead, she launched something new, something honest. A non-profit focused on community energy development, open-source environmental research, and support for whistleblowers who needed protection. People were skeptical at first. Some called it a publicity move. But Emily stayed quiet and let her work speak for itself. Over time, trust began to grow. Dave, meanwhile, opened a second garage in a nearby town. He hired young people who had aged out of the foster care system, kids like he once was. He gave them a trade, a steady paycheck, and a place where their past didn't follow them through the door. Every weekend, Emily came by with coffee and some new idea scribbled in her notebook. And every time, Dave would smile, shake his head, and build whatever crazy thing she had in mind. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and the garage lights flickered on, Dave handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked. He shrugged. "Figured you might want to see it." Inside was a photograph, an old one. It was of a younger Emily, maybe 6 or 7, sitting on the hood of a rusted-out car. Next to her, a man knelt with a crooked smile and grease on his cheek. "Her father," Dave said softly. "That was from the day he brought in an old Mustang to fix. I worked on it. We didn't talk much, but I remember he said one thing to me. He looked at you, then looked at me and said, 'She'll do something important one day. Just make sure she doesn't forget who she is.'" Emily stared at the photo for a long time, her throat tight. She looked up at Dave, her eyes misty. "Thank you. For everything." He shrugged again like he always did. "You needed a ride. That's all." She laughed, and for the first time in a long time it felt real. The threats eventually stopped. Or maybe they just went quiet. But Emily didn't let the fear win. She'd learned something through all of it. That truth doesn't wait for the right moment. It pushes through in the ugliest ways. But when it comes, it leaves the door open for change. The road hadn't been easy. From the dusty highway where she first stuck out her thumb, to the greenhouse where her life had changed forever, to the garage where she found peace. It had been a wild, terrifying, beautiful journey. Emily Langford had started as a runaway millionaire, hiding from a world that wanted to define her by her family's name. But she ended up becoming something far more powerful, herself. And Dave, the down-on-his-luck mechanic, who thought his best days were behind him, found something too. Not just purpose, not just love, but proof that sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a ride on a rainy road, can change everything. The world moved on. New headlines took over. But for those who had lived through it, who had risked everything to bring the truth forward, the memory remained. Somewhere out there, the shadows still whispered. But Emily no longer ran from them. She faced them, with the truth in her hands, and the road ahead wide open.